whose name may have been Jack Worthington. Years later, investigators would find no record of anybody by that name in the Navy or Merchant Marine archives. Some family members expressed some suspicions that Ted might have been fathered by Louise's own abusive father, Samuel Cowell, but no evidence has ever been cited to support or refute this. So, Ted spent the first 3 months of his life alone in this maternity home, over 400 miles from his mother. After she gave birth, she returned to the family home in Philadelphia, and Ted started his life with nurses and other caregivers at the Lund home. It has been suggested by members of his family that his mom never intended to go back for him. She was going to leave him to be put up for adoption. However, it was insisted that she bring him back to his family home. In the 1950s, being an unwed mother was scandalous, and illegitimate children were often teased and treated as outcasts. So, to avoid hopefully having Ted suffer, Louise's parents, Samuel and Eleanor Cowell, took on the role of being his parents. Friends and neighbors alike agreed that he was a handsome child with blue eyes and curly brown hair. Ted's grandparents, like I said, took on the role of father and mother, although most everyone knew that he was their eldest daughter's son. She was still living in their home after high school, and she took on the role of his sister easily. She did her best to help care for him, and she took him to a local Methodist church and made sure he was in bed on time. She tried to bond with him, but there was always some distance between them. Instead, Ted clung to his grandfather. In fact, he revered him, despite the older man's really disturbing behavior towards the rest of his family. For several years of his life, Ted thought his grandparents were his parents and his mother was his sister. He did eventually discover the truth, although, by his own account, he has varied recollections of the circumstances, which I think is weird. Whatever. He told a girlfriend that one of his cousins showed him a copy of his birth certificate, and he told a couple biographers that I'm sure I'll mention a bunch of times, Stephen McCowd and Hugh Ainsworth, that he found the certificate himself. Biographer and true crime writer Anne Rule, who knew Ted personally, believed that he did not find this information out until 1969, when he located his original birth certificate in Vermont. Ted expressed a lifelong resentment toward his mother for never talking to him about his true father and for leaving him to discover his true parentage himself. Now, in some interviews, Ted spoke very warmly of his grandparents. In 1987, however, he and other family members told attorneys that Samuel Cowell was a tyrannical bully and a bigot who hated blacks, Italians, Catholics, and Jews, so he hates everyone. Ted's grandfather beat his wife and the family dog and swung neighborhood cats around by their tails. He once threw Louise's younger sister, Julia, down a flight of stairs for oversleeping. He sometimes spoke out loud to unseen presences, and at least once flew into a violent rage when the question of Ted's paternity was raised. Ted described his grandmother as timid and obedient, who periodically underwent electroshock therapy for her depression, and that she feared to leave the house towards the end of her life. Poor thing, electroshock therapy. Ted occasionally exhibited disturbing behavior, even at an early age. He showed unusual interest in the macabre, and around the age of 3, became fascinated by knives. Creepy. Julia, his aunt, recalled awakening one day from a nap to find herself surrounded by knives from the kitchen, and Ted was just standing by the bed smiling. Just even more creepy. In 1951, Louise packed up and, with Ted in tow, moved 3,000 miles reasons, Louise changes her surname from Cowell to Nelson. Now, growing up in Tacoma was pretty disappointing to Ted. He and his mom initially lived in the home of his very successful great-uncle Jack. And Jack was a mentor to Ted, and he had the kind of wealth that Ted wanted his family to have. His uncle was able to send his own children away to overseas boarding schools, and Ted actually began to resent his wealthy cousins. His illegitimacy became a big deal when he hit his teen years. He was taunted by his cousins for being a bastard. Ted was devastated to learn that his mom was not married when he was born. He distanced himself even more once he realized that she had not told him about his true parentage. His mother was his first disappointment in life, and he was never able to get away from both needing her and being repelled by her. Now, meanwhile, Ted's mom, Louise, was making friends of her own. She joined the Methodist Church and soon crossed paths with a young man by the name of Johnny Culpepper Bundy. Johnny Bundy stood 5 feet tall, only. He was a cook, and he came across as shy and sort of reserved. But Louise sensed that he was very kind and dependable, and of course, very soon a romance blossomed. After a whirlwind of Methodist social functions, Louise and Johnny were married May 19th, 1951. The small family bought a house near Narrows Bridge, and while Johnny kept working as a cook, Louise tried her hand at secretarial work. Children, of course, followed. They had 2 boys and 2 girls. As he grew up, Ted was often pressed into babysitting, of course. He willingly complied, even though it usually meant missing out on outings with his friends. Johnny adopted Ted and changed his surname from Cowell to Bundy. And he treated Ted well. He included him on camping trips and other outdoor activities that he often took with his and Louise's own kids. And despite this, Ted really remained distant from his stepfather. He later complained to a girlfriend that Johnny wasn't his real father, that he wasn't very bright and didn't make much money. During high school, Ted was often isolated from the other kids his age. He couldn't seem to understand teenage social behavior, but he was skilled in faking it. The Bundy household was small and cramped and tense, and money was scarce, and Louise was left taking care of the children without any additional help. Because Ted was always quiet, he was most often left alone and ignored, while his parents dealt with their more demanding children. Ted's extreme introversion and any developmental issues went unnoticed, and or was explained by characteristics based on his shyness. Despite the circumstances at home, Ted grew into an attractive teenager who got along with his friends and performed well in school. He grew rapidly, but found it very hard to put on muscle. He was too skinny to play football, though he did join the track team in junior high. However, it was in the classroom rather than the track and field where Ted felt most comfortable. He maintained a B average and took his schoolwork and homework very seriously. Growing up in the 1950s meant that, appearing to be a clean-cut, modest young man, Ted wanted nothing more than to fit in with those men. But he didn't understand how friendships and relationships worked. His friends during high school mentioned his quick temper and his inability to avoid confrontation. One of his teachers stated that he had a hard time controlling his temper in class, and he was often seen by his peers clenching his fists. In his preteen years, he started to exhibit some disturbing behavior. And, any adolescent has a lot of questions about sex, but Ted had no one that he trusted to answer them. His mother was reserved and proper, and not someone he could approach regarding the topic. So, curious Ted began sneaking out of the house at night, searching for pornographic magazines in his neighbor's garbage cans. Initially, educated. His professors thought he was brilliant, a studious individual with enormous potential. Ted's charm and good looks made people see beyond the emptiness that was at his core. So at first, the change really did not help Ted's inability to socially blend, but in 1967, Ted fell in love for the first time. The object of his desire was a beautiful, dark-haired girl that lived nearby. She was, as he later described her, the most beautiful creature he had ever seen. He found out her name, Stephanie Brooks. Now, I have no clue if this is her real name. Many of the women involved in this story use several pseudonyms, but Stephanie seems to be the most common one that I found for her. From a distance, Ted admired her. He studied her like a specimen under a microscope. He stared at her in the lunchroom and fantasized from afar. In his death row tapes, he described her as a beautiful dresser, a beautiful girl, very personable, with a nice car and great appearance. It soon became apparent that Stephanie was really into football jocks, and this made Ted really, really depressed. Despite their differences, there was one thing that Ted and Stephanie had in common. They were both skiers, so perhaps this could be his way in. Showing signs of overcoming his insecurity, he took a bold step and he asked her if he could hitch a ride with her to the ski slopes of Seattle. Sheesh. She readily agreed, happy to have some company. This was the start of their unlikely romance. The pair started spending more and more time together. Stephanie seemingly enjoyed his company and even sought him out. As for Ted, he soon became obsessed with Stephanie. He was completely smitten with her, and soon they were lovers. She was 21. He was 20. She was from a wealthy California family, and he was illegitimate. She grew up in the midst of money, and he didn't have anything. And yet, their relationship worked, and they went steady for a year. Due to their financial incompatibilities, Ted soon began to feel insecure about their relationship, understandably. There were occasions when I felt like she expected a great deal more from me than I was capable of giving. I was not in any position to take her out and squire her around in a manner that she was accustomed to, or buy her clothing, he said. He tried hard to impress her to the point of grossly exaggerating his accomplishments. He downplayed the fact that he was working part-time bagging groceries, and instead tried to get her approval by boasting about a summer scholarship that he won to Stanford University. He said, "She inspired me to look at myself and to want to become something more. We spent a lot of time driving around in her car, making out and telling each other that we loved one another." For Stephanie, her year with Ted was an enjoyable, extended fling. She was in love with him, sure, but not the way he was in love with her, and she'd known from the start that their relationship really wasn't ever going to go anywhere. They'd spend some time together, they'd enjoy themselves, and they'd go their separate ways. After all, there was no way that Ted could ever fit into her society. Snob. Stephanie's graduation in June of 1968 seemed like the opportune time to end the romance. She'd be moving to San Francisco to find work, and Ted would stay in Seattle to finish his studies. So, to say that Ted took the rejection from Stephanie badly could be the ultimate understatement. He was absolutely devastated. this is when he learned about his parentage. Gone was the shy, introverted Ted Bundy. The man that returned to Washington was outgoing and confident, to the point of being seen as an extroverted braggart. Despite his rigorous study schedule, Ted still found time to frequent the bars of the University District. And in September of 1969, the handsome young man caught the eye of a woman named Meg Anders, or Liz Kendall, or Elizabeth Klopfer. She has many pseudonyms. I'm going to call her Meg from here on out because there are lots of names and it's confusing. A lot of people call her Liz. I came across her as Meg repeatedly, so that's where we're going. Meg was a divorced single mother of a 3-year-old. They were both alone at the Sandpiper Tavern, and Meg said she was trying to escape a creepy guy in the bar when she saw Ted sitting all alone and approached him. Thinking that he looked sad, she said to him, "You look like your best friend just died." And the two struck up a conversation. It flowed naturally, and the chemistry was instant. Ted ended up spending a platonic night at her house, and they became a couple a short time later. Now Ted and Meg began spending the evenings together, and Meg quickly came under Ted's spell, falling deeply in love with him. In a sense, this was a reversal of Ted's relationship with Stephanie. Meg absolutely adored the ground that Ted walked on. "I handed Ted my life and said, 'Here, take care of me,'" she said. And he did in a lot of ways, but I became more and more dependent on him. When I felt his love, I was on top of the world. And when I felt nothing, I felt that I was nothing, she said. Ted was less committed. His mind was often on other things and other people. He was still pining for Stephanie, but Meg would do in the meantime. His feelings toward her were strong, but inconsistent, she said. We'd be getting along fine, and then a door would slam, and I would be out in the cold until Ted was ready to let me back in. I'd spent hours trying to figure out what I'd done wrong, or what I'd said that was wrong. And then suddenly, he'd be warm and loving again, and I would feel needed and cared for. She wrote a book about Ted, and one story in the book takes place in February of 1970. I tried to kind of put everything in order, so she told Ted that she wanted to call him her husband, Ted, instead of her boyfriend. And they went to the courthouse, and they borrowed $5 from a friend and got a marriage license. A few days later, before Meg's parents arrived in Seattle to visit, she asked him to move his stuff out of her apartment, fearing that it would really upset her very conservative parents. And this apparently made Ted really mad. She recalls him saying, "If you're that hung up on what your parents think, then you're not ready to get married." And he tore up their marriage license and left. Now, 1969 and 1970 were pretty stable years in the life of Ted. He was focused on his academic progress. He was impressing his professors and gaining qualifications that would lead to his chosen legal career. His relationship with Meg was steady, with Ted playing the part of surrogate father to Meg's young daughter with passion and joy. During 1970, Ted was awarded a commendation by the Seattle Police Department when he ran down a purse snatcher. A few months later, he saved a drowning toddler at Green Lake. In mid-1970, Ted was now focused and goal-oriented. He re-enrolled at the University of Washington, this time as a psychology major. He became an honor student, and he was well regarded by his professors. In the beginning of 1971, he took a part-time job at the Seattle Crisis Clinic, situated on Seattle's Capitol Hill. He did the 9 p.m. to 9 a.m. shift a few nights a week. On a Tuesday night between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m., he was partnered with a 39-year-old crime writer named Ann Rule. For 10 months they worked together. his stump speeches for analysis by Evans's team. After Evans was reelected, Ted was hired as an assistant to Ross Davis, chairman of the Washington State Republican Party. Ross Davis thought well of Ted and described him as smart and aggressive, but a believer in the system. In early 1973, Ted was accepted into law schools of UPS and the University of Utah, despite mediocre law school admission test scores. He got in on the strength of the letters of recommendation from Evans, Davis, and several UW psychology professors. At this point, Ted had been with Meg for 4 years. Their relationship was steady, although it often felt that Meg was doing more of the giving than Ted was. Still, he was excellent with her daughter, who adored him, and marriage, of course, seemed just over the horizon. What Meg didn't know is Ted still carried an unquenchable desire for Stephanie. And even when he and Meg were making love, it was Stephanie's image in Ted's mind. So it was so strong that when he flew to San Francisco on a Republican Party business trip in the summer of 1973, he looked her up. Ted and Stephanie went to dinner, and she was bowled over by the changes that he had made. He was sophisticated, confident, and in control, and it appeared like he had money. His plan to win her over worked perfectly, and on parting, she agreed to come see him in Seattle. Now, he continued to date Meg as well, and neither woman knew of the other's existence. In the fall of 1973, Ted matriculated at UPS Law School and continued courting Stephanie, who flew to Seattle several times to stay with him. They talked about marriage, and at one point he introduced her to Ross Davis as his fiancée. He then whisked her off for a weekend in the snow at Cascade Pass. He had booked a luxurious condo for just the two of them, and over the course of that weekend, Stephanie fell in love with Ted all over again. And when he began talking of marriage plans, she excitedly joined in. Future plans were made for a life of domestic bliss. Of course, neither Stephanie nor Meg knew of the other's plans to marry Ted, and after his weekend with Stephanie, however, he started to evade talk of marriage with Meg. He seemed to be getting cold feet. Toward the end of 1973, Ted managed to coordinate his love lives so he could wine and dine Stephanie more liberally. He brought her to Seattle, and they dined at various restaurants throughout Chinatown. Strangely, though, Stephanie started sensing that something was different. Ted became less affectionate. He stopped talking about marriage and making plans. He confessed that he'd been having an affair with another woman and that she had ended up having an abortion. He was becoming cold and clinical and uncaring towards Stephanie, and in fact did not even purchase her a Christmas present. Despite her attempts to get to the bottom of his strange change in attitude, Stephanie was unable to discover why Ted became so cold towards her. But as hard as she tried, he just wouldn't let her in. So when she flew back to San Francisco at the start of the new year, he appeared to be glad to getting rid of her. In January of 1974, he abruptly broke off all contact with her. Her phone calls and letters went unreturned. She finally reached him by phone nearly a month later, and she demanded to know why he had unilaterally ended their relationship without explanation. And in a very flat, calm voice, he replied, "Stephanie, I have no idea what you mean." And then he hung up. She never heard from him again. Lucky girl. He he started dating other people, but they, of course, always stayed in touch. His love letters and phone calls, even from jail, she said, always sucked her right back in. Ted's letters made me feel loved, she wrote. So this is where I'm going to end part 1 of the Ted Bundy case. This is his early life and his, reason for doing what he's doing. The next video will be a little longer and a little more intricate because, you know me, I have to tell you about all of his victims. I'm not just gonna give you their names and their ages and skip right on by them. Ultimately, the story for me is always about victims. But I'm going to talk a little bit about his early life. I think that it is so weird that he thought his mom was his sister until he was in college. Why would you think, what was the explanation given to you when your sister moves you 3,000 miles away from home? I think that it is incredibly possible that Stephanie broke his heart and triggered something in him that made him bonkers, is the only word that I can think of. If you look at the pattern of his victims, which we will talk about, they all look like her, and I think that he was taking his revenge out on her. But the stuff, and I'm not going to get into too much detail with that, but the stuff that he does to these women, this guy, I don't care what he looks like. I don't care how charming he was or how charismatic he was, or I don't care. I don't care. This guy is a sicko, was a sicko, because he's not alive anymore. But so part 2 will be about most of his victims, and then we will get into the part 3 will be his arrests and the trial, and then his execution. I am debating, and I want to know what you guys think, but I could also do a part 4 about why he didn't get caught before suspected victims, what people think his motive was. There's a whole nother, 40 minutes of context that I could do, talking about even that people believe that he started murdering at age 14 of an 8-year-old that followed him around, but he never confessed to that one, but no one else has either. I don't want to bore you with only doing Ted Bundy topics for 4 videos in a row. I also, if you're still here with me, I am starting a Patreon, and I'll probably talk about that at the beginning of the next one because I totally lost my mind and forgot. And I have applied to have the YouTube channel monetized. I will probably do a ramble video tomorrow that might go up before this one, so I might just be repeating myself because I have a lot to ramble about. I've been making a list for once. I'm not usually that organized. I think that that's all that I've got for now. Oh, Patreon. Again, I probably will mention this in the ramble, but would you guys like extra ASMR content? Do you want vlogs? Do you want what would make you become a Patreon? I feel weird asking, but I have had a couple people mention it, and I would really like to get a better camera so that you can actually see my face. I'm sorry, it's probably better that I'm fuzzy, really, honestly. I thought about that when I posted the picture of my mom a job, and I start on Monday. This will probably get posted before that, maybe not, on the 4th. So my uploading schedule might change a little. I'm trying to figure out what the best thing is to do. I'm gonna stop rambling now because I'm gonna make a ramble video about all of this. Thank you for watching. I hope that you learned something new from this video. Like I said, I tried to find stuff that I didn't even know to try to spin it into making him more of a person. I'm not unsympathetic to his plight. I have had my heart broken more than once. I also, I knew who my dad was, but we did not have a close relationship. And I grew up, I have 3 siblings, so, and I was the youngest, and probably the quietest. But, and I was shy, terribly shy until I hit like 7th grade. Then it went away and now it's back. That did not make me a killer, y'all. I want to know what goes on in people's heads. What makes killers kill people? I can't ask Ted Bundy. I don't even know if I could sit in the room with a killer, what I would ask. I guess it would depend on the type. Like, is it someone that intended to kill someone, or it was an accident, or it was planned, or I don't know. It's just strange to me that people enjoy taking the lives of other people. And I think that's why I do this, because I try to figure out what makes them tick. But I don't think I want to know what makes Ted Bundy tick. He gives me the